I've been working on and off on this border for the last week, I guess, but mainly at night time when I've been getting home. I've been having a couple of hours while the light allows to have a rejiggle. And as I said on the previous video, I would get to spend a full day on it, which is today. And I've got quite a lot done, really. Now, as I've said, October, September included, September, October is a fantastic time to be moving plants because the warm soil enables the root zones to get going quick. So when you move them, it's just a lot better for the plant. So I've aimed to do just that, take my own advice and get moving them now. So it's a bit frustrating at times because you've got to wait for the right time, and often the right time is not the time you want to do it. We're all a bit impatient, especially in gardening, but in gardening you've got to be really, really patient. Now, the point of this is that because I've created this wildlife pond with its dip pools, it's made everything else change in this border, and this border is called the boardwalk border. And it just wasn't working because it's had several changes, and a lot of borders have several changes as you build them, and they can just morph into something completely different. And you have to move along with the changes. You can't simply sit there and leave it as what you did initially or originally. Although that may have worked to start with in this border, it's not working now. So up this section here, I had a Lincolnshire post and rail fence, which is now moved further down there, as you can just make out through the tree there and the shrubs. But that's, that's down there now. But it was originally here when the border was completely different. And initially I only had a little tiny border here. And I started with like a cow drinker at the back here. And that sort of, that really was a stop end just here, just about here. That's where that was. And then what it did was it gave me a little border here. And the intention originally was to create a walk-through on the lawn. And because I'm desperately trying to get rid of most of my grass, because grass is a monoculture, and for me, I don't need it, I don't want it, I want it gone. I want all the grass gone eventually and turned over to either gravel paths, big gravel paths, or stone or brick, whatever, but it will change over time. And the grass will be gone. Just waste money. So what I've done is everything that I've had to do in this border has been based on this wildlife pond area, and I've been moving plants around. So I've spent quite a lot of time. In fact, at one point I spent over an hour with 2 plants just deciding whether they would work, and in the end I decided they wouldn't. So that was an hour gone. But it's worth doing that sort of thing. It's worth sitting around and working these things out. Now, as I said, I had to move these things. I had no choice because some of them are just not working where they were. When you put the plants in initially, you hope that they will work and that they will do their thing. But sometimes they don't. Things don't work out as we planned. And as I knew I was changing the back area there, I knew that I had to make massive changes here. And don't forget, I sit up here. This is the decking on the shack. So I sit up here and I look down this border as I'm doing with the camera now. And it has to look right. So sometimes we've got to rip out big plants and put in smaller plants, or vice versa. And we've just got to jiggle around, just mess around with it and see what's going to work. Now, because I go for a late season perennial border, including grasses, I have a lot more work than I need, really. But it's worth it. The end results are always worth it if you put some time into it. So I'm having to think about all this border for the next maybe couple of years now, and I've absolutely no doubt that this will change at some point again. I will change certain little bits on it. So as I said on a previous video again, that euphorbia will fill all that gap. It will definitely, all that bare soil will be covered up by that euphorbia, and there are other plants that are then needed to put around it, and based on how it's going to be, would have an impact how they're going to look. So we're always looking to get in complementary plants and plant associations, and that's something I'll probably go into at another time. But basically what we need is, we could take this little section as a good example actually. We need the big leaf of this Rheum palmatum, and then we've got the Eupatorium skinny mini at the back of it, which is that one there. So there's a total contrast in their shapes. One's flattened and one's taller. And then with that, it's good to mix in, which there isn't a good example here, but it's good to mix in, say, a smaller grass with that. That would be a nice complementary thing as well to do. And in particular, a thing like the grass up there that you can see shining out, that one there. So it has a nice seed head, and that would absolutely look spot on if I wanted to put it there. And that would be a good plant association. But I've got good plant associations going on. We've moved some of the Euphorbia purpureums. We've been moving those around. They're doing okay. And I've put another one next to it. So we've got another nice plant association. It looks good. That Euphorbia picks up on that Sorbus, which is Raven's Bill. And I don't think I really explained fully the other day why it's called Raven's Bill. It's that black section there looks like a raven's bill, which it does. That there looks like a raven's bill, and that's how it got its name. And this is a Comicsata type, a Japanese type, and they are always the best coloured Sorbuses, and they give you the best autumn show. So if you're looking for a Comicsata, there are plenty of different varieties out there. They're the ones you want if you want a stunning colour. Now, as I've gone around, I've pulled out all the plants that I thought, well, they need moving. And I've looked in this border to see if I could find the space. And I haven't put anything other than one plant, I think, at the moment, in there. At the moment. Because I've got to allow the growth of other plants to take a precedent. So I've got to be patient. And as I said before, if you want to put infillers in there, if you want to put sacrificial plants in, such as like these geraniums, they could be considered sacrificial. But you also need a foil to the garden as well. And a lot of people don't like to see soil, but I'm talking foil, but this is soil. Now, soil, I like to see soil. I don't care. I like it. I don't know, it kind of gives a foil all of its own. But sometimes people like things like the geraniums to do that foil. So I could put lots of fillers in there, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. But you've got to remember, I've got a thing like this here. This is another type of elder, and it's a tall, skinny one called laced up, and it's very small at the moment. It's just gone in, but that will make about 7 foot eventually and be a skinny elder, and it'll be really, really nice. It's a bit like Black Tower, but this one's obviously the filigree type, the lacy type, but it's going to have the same effect. So that's going to look really good. So I've got to bear in mind what's going to go on here, and I have to give that time to grow. So we've put plants around it that will suit this area, but that I can also take out. The Symphotrichum there, the purple one, that's easy to move or easily to split down. So as that elder gets going, I can make some changes, and I will make changes if I need to. And there's a tiny little Calamagrostis there, the Carl Forster type, that I put in the middle of summer actually. And it is dinky, but it will end up to 7 foot, and it will look quite good there as a back foil for the euphorbia there that you can see, the little stumpy euphorbia that's Malachi, and that'll be good. So I found when you're working in these borders, you find plants that you forgot about, and that's just what I did. And I found this panicum, and it was next to the other grass over the back there. It was tucked next to that, and you could almost be forgiven for not knowing it's there, because it has the same sort of look, and it was so close to it that I didn't notice it until I got digging around there, and then I thought, well, that needs to come out. So that's Dallas Blues, that one, and it gets bigger than that, and it's called Dallas Blues because it has a lovely blue sheen to it eventually, which is not quite obvious at the moment, but it's still a young plant. So I've had to move that, and I've moved that over here, and again I've got to think about position, sun, does it get enough sun, is it in enough moisture, etc, etc. So we got this Pasteria, this Euphorbia Pasteria, and I said the other day that I thought I'd probably got a spot for that, and I think this is where it's going to go. I think that's just the place where it will do well. It's not going to get very big, and if it's going to survive at all, that's where it's going to survive, just there. And obviously it needs enough space. So I moved several plants, as I said, and this one here will go down on and these here. Nice sound of a couple of horses going past at the minute. And that looks good. And that Sanguisoba blackthorn, not as tall as it was last year, but it's lovely. And that sort of plant goes well with Dischampsias. They look good with this type of Sanguisoba, especially one called Gold Tow, which is probably better. The one I've got there is called Shotland, a taller variety, but nevertheless, it'll be okay. Now, I've got this Petrina punctiflora here, a Finnish punctiflora, and it's I guess the closest we could get to it is a cow parsley look. And this is what I tried to do with my grasses. I've not got enough of this type of plant at the moment because I'm still working on this border. But when you get uprights like that on the grass there, what you need is some other sort of complementary plant. So that's got the flat heads of a cow parsley looking one, although this is yellow, isn't exactly what I want, but it kind of complements, in fact it definitely complements the grass, and will do next year as it gets a bigger plant, produces more of this type of flattish domed head, then it'll be fine. But I've got all the plants that I want to put in, and I need to get more of these cow parsley types with the flattened heads because they really, really do complement grasses and look well with them. This is why I put things like the Eupatorium in, because it's got that nice flower head at this time of year, and again it does complement the grass. It looks good, but you've got to be bearing this in mind all the time, and it's something I'm always doing, always looking to improve. So I've got some plants here that are really tall, and although they shouldn't flop, often they do. They just sort of they don't flop so much as be lax, and this is Elianthus augialis, and it does just that, as does sometimes Rudbeckia lanceolata, and this one's Herbstonner. But I've got these metal rings that a friend at Caister gave me. He was given them. He didn't know what to do with them, so he said I could have them, so I've took them. So if he's watching this, you did give me those. I'm not making that up, but this is what I've managed to do with them. Because these do have an habit of sort of splaying a little bit, although now I've put this back in, it's not doing that at all. It's actually standing quite upright and tall. This will help to contain it. So when it gets growing next year, I've got to be very mindful and keep my eye on it. And as it grows up, it'll get to this section here, and I've got to be able to tuck that into there. So I've got to be very aware of what's happening with it. And I shall do the same with the Elianthus that I've just shown you. And there's one or two other plants, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 of these structures in. They're dead easy because I've already got these metal rings. All I need to do is get these little poles, stick them in, and what I've done is I've drilled a hole in each one. And that is brilliant. And the reason that I like this is because as winter approaches and everything dies back, everything doesn't look so great, and again in spring when we chop everything down, these will still be stood there and they'll be serving a purpose. They'll be looking really nice, and it'll be a bit wacky, as you can expect. It'll be a bit wacky, but it'll all add interest to the border before things get going again in the spring. And I'm going to put 3 of those in here. 3s, 5s and 7s, don't forget, are good to the eye. They look good. They just look good from a design point of view. So I shall put 2 more of those in there. I've got about 6 of those, so I've plenty to be going on with. Rather, and I shall put one on here as well. I held that with that remember, that was in that very plant I've just shown you here. The Elianthus was in this section before I took it out, and it had 4 posts, and I've had to readjust the post to make them work with this. So they're working well, so that's where that's gone. Now I've got a couple of other plants in here that I'm going to do the same trick with. Sometimes Symphotrichums tend to splay out. This one's actually been held together with that, and the reason I've tied it up is because when I moved it, I knew it was going to do this, so I had to be aware of that straight away and change it around. So I've done that, and I've tied it up, and it doesn't hurt to tie it up. It doesn't need no more support than that, and it's holding quite well. And what will happen over time is these, if you do it early enough, these flowers will naturally splay away from each other, and they'll still look good. And they do. I think they do. So, yeah, we're getting side-lit at the moment in the boardwalk border. Pollinators are coming into the Symphotrichums, Symphotrichums. Say it how you wish, but that's how it's spelled. And so that's serving a purpose. Now, I've looked at this again from up there, as I said I would, up at the house, and it's looking quite nice at the moment. We'll take a little wander around, show you from a different point of view again. But when you're redesigning borders, you've really got to go through it time and time again and just keep looking at it. Do it, put things in pots into the border itself, sit them there and leave them for a week if it needs a week for you to make your mind up, and just leave them there. Don't worry about it. Just get back in there. Nothing's in a rush. Nothing's going to spoil. There's always going to be an optimum time to put these things in, but as I said, nothing's in a rush. So that's looking quite good at the minute. One of the casualties as I was removing a plant was one called Miscanthus sinensis malapartus, and it was in the middle of that border, and I was just moving it a couple of feet from where it was, and I've struggled with this plant for the last 2 years in this border. It's never really got going, and when I lifted the plant and went to put it back in the new hole, it actually fell into bits. So it's actually done me a favour, and here are those bits. So I've managed to pot up 3 pots of malapartus in here, and I've got some more stock now. So they're in there. So all is not lost with them, and what I've done is, I see it as a sign, to be honest, and I've got Miscanthus memory that I've been showing you on lots of my videos, and there's a little tiny one there. You can just see the seed head. Let's get closer. There you go. So that's memory. That's the big one I've been showing you and ranting and raving about, and it's only a baby at the minute. That's off that plant itself. It's only got a little section down there going on, but next year that will triple or quadruple in leaf, and it should throw up about 10 or 15 seed heads like that, and it's one of the best, and it will be taller. I'll be able to see this from right up at the house. It will stand out a mile. Although I've already got Miscanthus in here, there's one there and there's one just across near that post. This is the one that will stand out the most. The reason it'll stand out the most is because it's that colour, and it has the big seed heads and the massive, so that'll look really nice. So there we go. That's the border so far. I've absolutely no doubt in my mind that I will continue to make small changes. I've got shrubs and trees in here, as I said. There's a sorbus here called autumn spire. There's a viburnum there. No, is it a viburnum? No, that's not a viburnum. The viburnum's here somewhere, further down the garden. There's a viburnum down there. This one is, and we'll give you the name because it's still on it. It was already in the garden when I moved here. I should be able to remember this, but I've got so many plants. Oh, it's a Philadelphus, so it's a mock orange. And it has the most wonderful smell to this. And the reason I keep it is because it reminds Kathy of her grandmother, apparently. So I kept it for that very reason, and it moved actually from the border across there to here, where it suits it a lot better. In actual fact, it was under that holly tree, and when I moved here, that holly tree had branches and leaves all the way down to the ground, and I lifted its skirt, took it up, and we found this underneath it because we could smell it but we couldn't see it. So now it's doing better, and it'll have a lovely scent. But while we're here as well, let's tell you about this one. This is Calamagrostis brachytricha, or brachytricha as some people call it, but what a wonderful seed head. This is one grass that will take shade. I did a shade grass video the other day, but this is one grass that will definitely take shade, and it has this wonderful look to it. And I was looking to put more in here, but I can't find the ones that I set aside. I don't know where they've gone. I was going to put 2 or 3 more into here, but it will self-seed through, and it won't be bothered that it's in shade. So that's going to be really nice. So there you go. Another walk through the boardwalk border, just to show you the changes that I've been making. Now we've just got to wait for time. I mean, the weather's cracking. It's looking really nice. The border looks good from whichever angle you take it at. And yeah, it's looking great. I've got Elegia tectorum here, which is a restio, in this pot, and I'm now, as I've said before, convinced it will take our conditions in England now. It's tough enough to do it, and I am going to put it in there. And look what it's done. I had it sat inside a bigger pot, and it's actually sent its root zone out. You can see this section here, that's the roots. They're popped out of the pot at the bottom, so I'm hoping to put it around here somewhere because, you know, you're never 100% sure whether it'll make it. And I hope it will, but I'm going to sort of like give it a little bit of an insurance policy by putting it into a warmer area. Okay. I think I've said enough about that. Any questions? Fire away at me. I can't promise to answer them all, but any questions that I can answer, I will answer. If you need any help and advice, I'm always there to give you a little bit of that as well. This is why I do these videos. Okay. So I'll talk to you on the next one. Ta-da!